The sun beat down mercilessly on the cracked earth outside Pyramid City, Nevada, and Zachary Harlan could see her from half a mile away, a woman on her knees clawing at the hard-pan soil with nothing but her bare hands and a broken piece of wood, her desperate movements visible even through the shimmering heat waves of that August afternoon in 1878. He pulled his horse to a stop at the crest of the ridge, his weathered hand coming up to shield his eyes as he studied the scene below. Zachary had spent the last 8 years in these mountains, trapping and hunting, his broad shoulders and thick arms a testament to the hard life he had chosen after the war. His dark hair hung past his collar, tied back with a strip of leather, and his beard was neatly trimmed despite his isolated existence. At 30 years old, he had seen enough of humanity to prefer the company of elk and pine trees, but something about the woman's frantic digging made his chest tighten with concern. He urged his horse forward, the pack horse following behind loaded with pelts he had planned to trade in Pyramid City. As he drew closer, he could hear her sobbing, could see the bloody state of her hands, the way her dark dress hung on her thin frame. She had not noticed his approach, too consumed by whatever drove her to tear at the unyielding ground. "Madam," he called out when he was 20 feet away, not wanting to startle her too badly. She jerked upright, spinning to face him with wild eyes. Her face was streaked with dirt and tears, her brown hair falling from its pins in tangled strands. She could not have been more than 22 or 23, and the terror in her expression made Zachary's protective instincts flare to life. "Please," she gasped, scrambling backward on her knees. "Please, I am almost done. Just let me finish. I need to bury her properly." Zachary dismounted slowly, his muscular frame unfolding from the saddle with practiced ease. He held up both hands to show he meant no harm. "Easy now. I am not here to hurt you or stop you from anything." "What are you trying to bury?" The woman let out a choked sound that was half laugh, half sob. "My seat died 2 days ago, and the ground is so hard, and I do not have proper tools, and the coyotes will come, and I cannot let them get to her. I cannot." Her voice rose with each word until she was nearly shrieking, and Zachary moved closer, careful and deliberate. He could see now the canvas-wrapped bundle lying a few feet away in the sparse shade of a Joshua tree. His jaw tightened. "Where are you from? Where is your family?" "Dead," she whispered, the fight draining out of her all at once. "All dead. Cholera took my parents in Sacramento. Sarah and I were traveling to meet our aunt in Salt Lake City. We had enough money for stage fare, but Sarah got sick on the way. The driver made us get off in Pyramid City, said he would not risk the other passengers. She died 3 nights later in a boarding house. The landlady threw me out this morning when I could not pay, and the undertaker wanted $20 I do not have. I thought if I could just get far enough from town, I could bury her myself where it would be peaceful, but the ground." She looked down at her ruined hands, and fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. Zachary felt something crack in the armor he had built around his heart. "What is your name?" "Luna. Luna Ashford." "Miss Ashford, I am Zachary Harlan. I live up in the mountains, and I have a proper shovel on my pack horse. Let me help you give your sister a decent burial." Luna stared at him as if he had spoken a foreign language. "You would do that? For a stranger?" "Nobody should have to claw at the earth with bare hands to bury their kin," he said simply. He walked to his pack horse and retrieved the shovel, then moved to the spot where Luna had been digging. The ground was indeed hard as iron, baked by the relentless Nevada sun. "This spot suit you?" She nodded, unable to speak, and Zachary set to work. His powerful shoulders flexed as he drove the shovel into the earth, his muscles straining with each lift. The sun climbed higher, and sweat soaked through his shirt, but he did not stop. Luna watched him in silence, cradling her injured hands against her chest. It took 2 hours to dig a grave deep enough to protect the body from scavengers. When Zachary finally climbed out, his shirt was plastered to his broad chest, his face flushed with exertion. Without a word, he lifted the canvas-wrapped bundle as gently as if it weighed nothing at all and lowered it into the grave with respect. "Do you want to say anything?" he asked quietly. Luna knelt at the edge of the grave, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sarah, you were the best sister anyone could ask for. You were brave and kind, and you deserved so much better than this. I promise I will survive. I promise I will make it mean something that I lived and you did not. I love you. I will always love you." Her voice broke on the last word, and she covered her face with her hands. Zachary began filling in the grave, the sound of earth falling on canvas making Luna flinch with each shovelful. When it was done, he used flat stones from a nearby wash to mark the grave, building a small cairn that would be visible but not obvious to passers-by. "She will rest peaceful here," he said. "I give you my word on that." Luna looked up at him, this mountain man with kind eyes and gentle strength, and felt something shift inside her. "Thank you. I do not know how I can ever repay you." Zachary studied her for a long moment, taking in her exhausted face, her bleeding hands, the way she swayed slightly even kneeling down. "When did you last eat?" "Yesterday morning, I think. Maybe the morning before. I am not sure." He muttered something under his breath that sounded like a curse. "Come on, I have supplies. Let me tend those hands and get some food in you, and then we will figure out what happens next." "I have nowhere to go," Luna said, her voice hollow. "No money, no family, nothing." "We will worry about that after you have eaten," Zachary said firmly. He offered her his hand, and after a moment's hesitation she took it. His palm was rough and warm, his grip strong but careful of her injuries. He pulled her to her feet with effortless strength, and Luna felt dizzy for a moment, whether from hunger or his nearness she could not say. Zachary led her to a cluster of rocks that provided some shade and made her sit while he unpacked supplies from his horses. He produced hardtack, dried venison, a canteen of water, and a small jar of what looked like salve. Luna watched him move with economical grace, each action purposeful and efficient. "Drink slow," he instructed, handing her the canteen. "You are dehydrated." The water was the most delicious thing Luna had ever tasted. She had to force herself not to gulp it down. Zachary sat beside her and examined her hands with surprising gentleness for such a large man. "This will sting," he warned before applying the salve. Luna hissed in pain but did not pull away. His touch was careful, almost tender, as he worked the medicine into her torn skin. "My mother was a healer, taught me about plants and remedies before she passed. I am sorry for your loss. It was a long time ago. War took my father and brother. Fever took my mother a year later. That is when I headed west and up into the mountains. You have been alone since then?" Zachary shrugged, wrapping her hands with clean strips of cloth he pulled from his saddlebag. "More or less. I come down to trade a few times a year, but mostly I keep to myself. Got a cabin about 15 miles northeast of here, up where the pine tree trees start. It is a good life." Luna took the piece of hardtack he offered and bit into it, her stomach cramping with hunger. "It sounds lonely. Lonely is better than dead, and that is what the war made of most men I knew." His voice was matter of fact, but Luna heard the old pain beneath it. "Eat more, you need your strength." They sat in companionable silence while Luna slowly consumed the food Zachary provided. The sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the desert in shades of gold and amber. Luna looked back at the cairn, marking Sarah's grave, and felt tears prick her eyes again. "What was she like?" Zachary asked softly. "Optimistic, always seeing the best in people, in situations. She was the one who convinced me we could make it to Salt Lake City, that our aunt would take us in and we could start fresh. She was going to be a school teacher. She loved children, loved teaching them things. I was the practical one, always worrying about money and safety and what could go wrong." Luna's voice turned bitter. "Turns out I was right to worry. Being practical does not mean you caused what happened. Disease does not care about optimism or caution. It just is." Luna looked at him, at the understanding in his hazel eyes, and felt something unknot in her chest. "How do you bear it? The loss? You just keep moving forward. That is all you can do. Keep living because they cannot anymore." The simple truth of it hit Luna hard. She had been so focused on her grief, on her immediate survival, that she had not thought about what came after. Sarah would want her to live, truly live, not just exist. But how could she do that with nothing and no one? "I do not know what to do," she admitted. "I have no skills that anyone would pay for. I can read and write and do sums, but what good is that? I have no references, no place to stay. The boarding house has my trunk with all our remaining possessions, but I cannot get it without paying what I owe." Zachary was quiet for a long moment, his gaze on the distant mountains. When he spoke, his voice was careful, measured. "I am about to make an offer, and I want you to hear me clear. There is no obligation and no expectation of anything improper. You understand? Luna nodded slowly, her heart beginning to pound. I could use help at my cabin. Someone to help with cooking, preserving food, mending, that sort of thing. Winter is coming in a few months, and preparing for it is a lot of work for one person. I would pay you fair wages, give you your own room, and when spring comes, if you want to move on, I will take you wherever you want to go with enough money to make a start. If you want to stay longer, we can discuss that when the time comes. You would do that? Take in a complete stranger? You are not a stranger anymore, Miss Ashford. You are someone who just buried their sister with dignity and grace, despite terrible circumstances. That tells me about your character. And I give you my word, on my mother's memory, that I will treat you with respect. You would be safe with me. Luna searched his face, this mountain man who had appeared like an answer to a prayer she had not known how to voice. Everything in his bearing spoke of honor and strength. She had no reason to trust him except the gentleness with which he had helped her, the care in his actions, the sincerity in his eyes. I accept, she said. Thank you, Mr. Harlan. Zachary, he corrected. If we are going to be living under the same roof, might as well use given names. Then you must call me Luna. He smiled for the first time, and it transformed his serious face, making him look younger and somehow more approachable. Luna it is. Now we have a choice. We can make camp here tonight and head to Pyramid City in the morning to settle your affairs, or we can ride through the evening and get there before full dark. What would you prefer? Luna looked back at the grave one more time. Let us ride. I want to leave this place behind. Zachary nodded and began packing up their supplies. He helped Luna onto his horse, then swung up behind her, his arms coming around her to hold the reins. Luna stiffened for a moment at the contact, but the solid warmth of him at her back was more comforting than threatening. You can sleep if you need to, he said. I will not let you fall. Luna had not realized how exhausted she was until that moment. With the immediate crisis past and food in her belly, her body seemed to recognize that it could finally rest. She let herself lean back against Zachary's broad chest, felt his arms adjust to support her weight, and closed her eyes. She woke to the sound of voices and the glow of lanterns. They had reached Pyramid City, a collection of buildings huddled around the sparse water source that gave the place its name. Zachary was speaking to someone, his voice low and firm. I need to know which boarding house, and I will settle her account. The Larson place? Most likely, a man's voice replied. Mrs. Larson is not known for her charity. Where is it? The man gave directions, and Zachary thanked him. Luna stirred and straightened. I am awake. You do not have to pay my debt. Consider it an advance on your wages, Zachary said. Besides, you need your things. They found the boarding house easily enough, a narrow 2-story building that looked like it had seen better days. Mrs. Larson answered Zachary's knock with a suspicious expression that soured further when she saw Luna. You have some nerve showing your face here again. I am here to settle Miss Ashford's account, Zachary said before Luna could respond. How much does she owe, Mrs. Larson named a sum that made Luna gasp. It was triple what it should have been. That includes the room, meals, and the cost of cleaning after that sick girl, Mrs. Larson said defensively. Zachary's expression did not change, but Luna felt him tense. That is robbery, madam, and we both know it. I will give you what is fair for 3 nights' lodging and meals, and not a penny more. And you will return Miss Ashford's trunk. I will do no such thing. The debt is what I say it is. Zachary leaned forward slightly, and though he did not raise his voice, there was steel in it. Madam, I am trying to be respectful, but my patience has limits. You took advantage of a young woman in terrible circumstances. Now we can settle this like reasonable people, or I can go have a conversation with the sheriff about your business practices, your choice. Mrs. Larson's face flushed, but she could apparently see that Zachary was not a man to be trifled with. She named a new sum, much lower, and Zachary paid it without haggling. The trunk was produced, and Zachary carried it effortlessly to where his horses waited. Thank you, Luna said quietly as they walked away. You did not have to do that. Yes, I did. People like her make their living preying on the desperate. It is not right. They stopped at the general store, where Zachary traded some of his pelts for supplies. The storekeeper, a friendly man named Mr. Chen, greeted Zachary warmly. Good to see you, Zach. Got some fine pelts there. Thanks, Henry. I need the usual supplies, plus extras. Got someone helping me through the winter. Henry's eyebrows rose as he looked at Luna, but he was too polite to ask questions. He helped Zachary select flour, sugar, salt, coffee, and various other necessities. Luna watched the easy way Zachary interacted with the man, the respect between them, and felt reassured that she had made the right choice. By the time they left Pyramid City, it was full dark, and Luna was swaying with exhaustion again. Zachary made camp a few miles outside of town in a sheltered spot with access to water. He set up his bedroll for Luna and insisted she take it while he would sleep under the stars. "I have done it 1,000 times. Get some proper rest." Luna was too tired to argue. She lay down and was asleep within minutes, her last conscious thought that she felt safer than she had in months. She woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. The sun was just peeking over the horizon, painting everything in soft pink and orange light. Zachary was crouched by a small fire, cooking breakfast with the ease of long practice. "Morning," he said when he noticed her stirring. "How do you feel? Sore tired, but better than yesterday. Good. Eat up. We have a long ride ahead." Over breakfast, Zachary outlined what their journey would look like. It would take them the better part of 2 days to reach his cabin in the mountains. They would need to camp one more night on the trail. "The terrain gets rough," he warned. "Let me know if you need to rest." They set out as soon as the meal was finished and camp was packed. This time Luna rode the pack horse, which was gentler and more patient than Zachary's larger mount. The landscape gradually shifted as they traveled, the flat desert giving way to rolling hills, then steeper inclines. Scrub brush yielded to pinyon pines, and the air grew noticeably cooler. Zachary was not much of a talker, but the silence was comfortable rather than awkward. He pointed out landmarks and wildlife, showed her the tracks of various animals, explained how to read the land. Luna found herself fascinated by the depth of his knowledge, the way he moved through this wilderness as if it were home. Because it was home, she realized, this was not just where Zachary lived, it was where he belonged. They made camp that night beside a clear stream that tumbled down from higher elevations. Zachary caught trout with his hands, a skill that left Luna amazed, and cooked them over the fire with wild herbs he gathered. It was the best meal Luna could remember eating. "You have made a good life here," she said as they ate. "I can see why you stay. It suits me. The quiet, the work, the seasons, everything makes sense up here. Man works hard, he survives, he gets lazy or careless. Nature teaches him a lesson. It is honest. Do you ever miss people? Towns, conversation, company?" Zachary was quiet for a moment, his gaze on the fire. "Sometimes, mostly in winter when the cabin can feel small and the nights are long. But it is better than the alternative." "Which is?" "Being around people who want things from you, who judge or gossip or lie. I got enough of that during the war and after." Luna nodded slowly. "I understand that, but not everyone is like that. Some people are good like you." Zachary looked at her then, something unreadable in his expression. "You do not know me well enough to say that yet. Maybe not. But I know you helped me when you did not have to. That counts for something." They talked more that night than they had since meeting, sharing stories of their pasts in careful increments. Luna told him about growing up in Sacramento, about her father's tailor shop and her mother's garden. Zachary talked about his childhood in Virginia, about learning to hunt with his father and brother, about the farm that had been burned during the war. When they finally settled down to sleep, Luna felt a strange sense of peace. Her grief for Sarah was still there, a heavy weight on her heart, but it no longer felt suffocating. Maybe Zachary was right. Maybe you just kept moving forward. They reached the cabin the next afternoon. It was larger than Luna had expected, a solid structure of hewn logs nestled in a clearing surrounded by tall pines. A stone chimney rose from one end, and there was a covered porch across the front. A small barn stood nearby, and Luna could see a fenced garden area and what looked like a smokehouse. "This is beautiful," she said sincerely. Zachary looked pleased. "I built it myself over 2 summers. It is solid and warm. Come on, I will show you around." The inside of the cabin was one large main room with a kitchen area, a table and chairs, and a sitting area near the fireplace. A ladder led up to a loft, and there was a separate bedroom on the ground floor. "That is yours," Zachary said, nodding to the bedroom. "I sleep in the loft. There is a lock on the door if you want it." Luna looked at the room. It was simple but clean, with a real bed, a chest of drawers, and even a small window with shutters. "This is wonderful, thank you." Over the following days, they fell into a routine. Zachary showed Luna around the property, teaching her about his systems for water, food storage, and animal management. He had chickens for eggs, a goat for milk, and he hunted regularly for meat. His garden, now at the end of the growing season, had provided vegetables that needed to be preserved. Luna threw herself into the work with determination. Her hands healed quickly, and she proved to be a quick learner. Zachary taught her to recognize edible plants, to preserve food through drying and smoking, to mend leather and clothing. In turn, Luna brought organization to his rather haphazard household, improving his cooking and helping him prepare for winter with greater efficiency than he had managed alone. They worked side by side from dawn until dusk, and Luna found satisfaction in the physical labor. At night, they sat by the fire and talked, slowly revealing more of themselves to each other. Zachary had a dry sense of humor that caught Luna off guard and made her laugh. Luna had opinions on everything and was not afraid to share them, which seemed to amuse and sometimes surprise him. "You are not what I expected when I saw you digging in the desert," Zachary admitted one evening in late September. "What did you expect? Someone more fragile, someone who would need constant protecting." Luna raised an eyebrow. "Would you have still offered me work if you had known I was not fragile?" "Yes, but I might have worried less about whether you could handle it. And now I know you can handle just about anything." The compliment warmed Luna more than she wanted to admit. Somewhere in the weeks of working alongside him, she had started to see Zachary as more than just her employer. She noticed the way his muscles flexed when he chopped wood, the gentle way he handled the animals, the rare smile that made her heart skip. She found herself looking for excuses to stand near him, to hear his voice, to make him laugh. It was dangerous territory, and Luna knew it. She was dependent on his goodwill, living in his home with nowhere else to go. The last thing she should do was develop feelings for him. But the heart, she was learning, did not much care about should. October brought the first real cold, frost that sparkled on the ground in the mornings and turned the aspens gold. Zachary took Luna hunting, teaching her to track and shoot. She proved to have a decent eye and steady hands, and the first time she brought down a deer, Zachary's pride in her accomplishment was obvious. "You are a natural," he said, and Luna glowed with the praise. They worked together to butcher and preserve the meat, and Zachary opened a bottle of whiskey he had been saving. They sat on the porch wrapped in blankets, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. "This was Sarah's favorite time of day," Luna said softly. "The gloaming," she called it, "when the world is turning from day to night and everything feels possible." She sounds like she was special. She was. I miss her every day. Zachary was quiet for a moment, then reached over and took Luna's hand. The gesture was simple, comforting, but it sent a jolt through her. His hand was warm and rough and strong, and she did not want him to let go. "She would be proud of you," he said. "Of how you have survived and adapted. You should be proud too." Luna looked at him, at the firelight reflecting in his eyes, and felt her breath catch. He was looking at her with something more than kindness, something that made her pulse race. "Zachary," she whispered, not sure what she was asking. He released her hand and stood abruptly, his expression suddenly shuttered. "We should get some sleep. Early start tomorrow." Luna felt the loss of his warmth like a physical thing. She nodded and went inside, confused and aching with something she could not quite name. November brought snow, first a light dusting, then heavier falls that blanketed the world in white. The cabin became a warm haven against the cold, and Luna and Zachary grew more comfortable with each other. But there was also a tension now, an awareness that had not been there before. Luna would catch Zachary watching her, his gaze intense, and then he would look away. She found herself hyper-aware of him, of every accidental touch, every moment when they stood too close. One afternoon, while bringing in firewood, Luna slipped on the icy porch. Zachary caught her, his arms wrapping around her waist, pulling her against his solid chest. For a moment they stood frozen, Luna's hands pressed against his shoulders, Zachary's arms holding her secure. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice rough. Luna looked up at him and saw the same want in his eyes that she felt burning in her own chest. "Yes," she breathed. Zachary's gaze dropped to her lips, and Luna felt her whole body tense with anticipation. He was going to kiss her. She wanted him to kiss her. But instead, He set her carefully on her feet and stepped back. "Be more careful," he said, and went back to his work. Luna wanted to scream with frustration. She went inside and busied herself with cooking, her emotions a tangled mess. Why did he pull away? Was she misreading his interest, or was he trying to be honorable, to not take advantage of her circumstances? That evening, she could not stand it anymore. "Zachary, can we talk?" He looked up from where he was working on repairing a harness. "Of course." Luna sat down across from him, gathering her courage. "I need to know something. Do you? Have you ever thought about me as more than just someone who works for you?" Zachary went very still. "Luna, that is not a conversation we should have." "Why not?" "Because you are vulnerable, and I am in a position of power over you. It would not be right. I am asking you directly, how is that taking advantage?" "Because you might feel obligated to feel a certain way, because I gave you shelter and work." Luna felt a flash of anger. "Do you truly think so little of me? You think I do not know my own mind? I think you have been through trauma and loss, and you are grateful, and maybe that is confusing your feelings." Luna stood up, her hands clenched into fists. "You are wrong. I know exactly what I feel. I have been falling in love with you since you helped me bury my sister. Since you stood up to that horrible boarding house woman. Since you taught me to hunt and trusted me to be useful and made me laugh when I thought I would never laugh again. I am not confused and I am not grateful. I am in love with you." The words hung in the air between them. Zachary stared at her, his expression unreadable, and Luna felt her heart plummet. She had miscalculated. He did not feel the same way. Then he moved. In 2 strides he crossed the space between them, his hands cupping her face, and he kissed her with a hunger that took her breath away. Luna made a small sound of surprise and relief, her arms wrapping around his neck, kissing him back with all the pent-up longing of the past months. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Zachary rested his forehead against hers. "I have been in love with you since you knelt by your sister's grave and promised to survive," he said roughly. "I have been fighting it because I did not want you to feel pressured, but God help me, Luna, I am done fighting it." "Then do not fight it," Luna said. "I want this, I want you." He kissed her again, slower this time, tender and deep. When he pulled back, his eyes were serious. "I want to do this right, court you properly even if we are living under the same roof. I want you to be sure, I am sure, even so. Give me the chance to show you that this is real, that I am committed, not just to your work or your company, but to you. To building a life with you, if you will have me." Luna felt tears prick her eyes, but they were good tears. "I would like that very much." The winter that followed was the happiest time of Luna's life. Zachary courted her with a quiet determination that made her fall even more deeply in love. He carved her small gifts from wood, brought her the first winter berries, wrote her clumsy but heartfelt notes that he left for her to find. They held hands by the fire, stole kisses in the barn, talked late into the night about their dreams and hopes. The physical attraction between them was undeniable, but Zachary held firm to his principles. "I will not ruin your reputation or mine," he said. "When we come together as husband and wife, it will be because we are husband and wife." "Are you proposing?" Luna asked with a smile. "Not yet, but soon." The proposal came in February, during a break in the weather when the sun shone bright on fresh snow. Zachary took Luna on a walk through the woods to a clearing where they could see for miles across the white landscape. He got down on one knee, his hands holding hers, his hazel eyes full of love. "Luna Ashford, you walked into my life when I had convinced myself I did not need anyone. You have brought light and joy and purpose to my days. You have made this cabin feel like a home instead of just a shelter. I love you with everything I am, and I promise to spend the rest of my life making you happy. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Luna said through tears. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." He slipped a ring onto her finger, a simple gold band with a small stone. "It was my mother's," he said. "The only thing of hers I kept. I want you to have it." Luna kissed him, pouring all her love and gratitude into it. She had lost so much, but she had found something precious beyond measure. She had found home. They married in April when the snow had melted and wildflowers bloomed across the meadows. They rode down to Pyramid City, Luna wearing a simple dress she had sewn from fabric Zachary had brought back from his last trading trip. The ceremony was performed by a traveling preacher with Mr. Chen and his wife as witnesses, Luna Harlan. Her new name felt right, felt like it belonged to her in a way her old name never quite had. Their wedding night was everything Luna had dreamed of and more. Zachary was gentle and patient, treating her like something precious, and the love between them made every touch meaningful. Afterward, lying in his arms in their bed, Luna felt a completeness she had never known. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I love you too," Zachary replied, his arms tightening around her. "For the rest of my life, I will love you." They settled into married life with an ease that surprised them both. Luna had been nervous that things might change, but if anything, they grew closer. They worked side by side during the day and fell into each other's arms at night. They learned each other's rhythms and habits, argued occasionally and made up thoroughly, built a life filled with laughter and affection. Summer came and Luna helped Zachary with his trap lines, learned to tan hides properly, worked in the expanded garden they had planted together. Her body grew strong from the work, her skin tanned by the sun, her hair bleached lighter. She barely recognized the desperate woman Zachary had found digging in the desert. In September, Luna realized her monthly bleeding had not come. She waited another month to be certain, then told Zachary over dinner. He went very still. "You are sure?" "As sure as I can be. I think I am about 3 months along." A slow smile spread across his face, and then he was lifting her up and spinning her around, laughing with pure joy. "We are having a baby. Luna, we are having a baby." His happiness was infectious. Luna had not been sure how she would feel about motherhood, but seeing Zachary's delight made her excited too. They would be a family. The pregnancy was not easy. Luna suffered terrible sickness in the early months, and Zachary fretted over her constantly. But as her belly swelled and the baby began to move, they both grew more confident. Zachary built a cradle from pine, carved with intricate designs. Luna sewed tiny clothes and blankets. They argued good-naturedly over names. In March, as spring began to return to the mountains, Luna's labor began. Zachary had brought a midwife from Pyramid City to stay with them for the last few weeks, and the woman proved worth her weight in gold. The labor was long and hard, and there were moments when Zachary feared he might lose Luna, but she was stronger than he had ever imagined. Just before dawn, their son was born, his strong cry filling the cabin. Luna held him with shaking hands, tears streaming down her face, while Zachary knelt beside the bed with his own eyes wet. "He is perfect," Zachary whispered. "You are amazing. I love you so much." "Zachariah," Luna said. "His name should be Zachariah." Zachary looked at her, overwhelmed. "Are you certain?" "I am certain. Zachariah Henry Harlan, after his father and Mr. Chen, who helped us when we needed it." The midwife stayed for 2 weeks, helping Luna recover and teaching her about caring for a newborn. When she left, it was with a purse much heavier than they had agreed upon, and an invitation to return whenever she was needed. Adjusting to life with a baby was exhausting and wonderful. Zachariah was a good baby, healthy and strong, and watching Zachary with their son made Luna fall in love with him all over again. This mountain man, so capable and tough, was infinitely gentle with the tiny person in his arms. He sang lullabies in a surprisingly decent voice, changed diapers without complaint, and walked the floor for hours when Zachariah was fussy. As the months passed and Zachariah grew, Luna found herself thinking often of Sarah. How she would have loved being an aunt. How she would have delighted in every milestone. Luna told Zachariah stories about his aunt, determined that he would know about the woman whose death had inadvertently led to his existence. 2 years later, Luna was pregnant again. This time she knew what to expect, and while the sickness was just as bad, she handled it with more confidence. Zachary was even more protective than before, which led to their first real fight. "I am not made of glass," Luna snapped one afternoon when he tried to take over her chores. "I am pregnant, not dying. I am just trying to help. You are trying to wrap me in cotton and put me on a shelf. I need to work. It keeps me sane." They reached a compromise. Luna would do lighter work and accept help with the heavier tasks. Zachary would stop hovering quite so obviously. It was a lesson in the give and take of marriage that served them well. Their daughter was born in October, during the first snowfall of the season. The labor was mercifully shorter than with Zachariah, and little Laura Sarah Harlan came into the world with a ferocious will that made her parents laugh even through their exhaustion. "She is going to be a handful," the midwife said with approval. She was right. Laura was nothing like her easygoing brother. She was opinionated from the start, demanding and stubborn and absolutely beloved. Zachariah adored her, toddling after her cradle and bringing her his favorite toys. Life in the cabin became louder, busier, and fuller. Luna often fell into bed exhausted, but it was a good exhaustion. They were building something real and lasting, a family, a legacy. When Zachariah was 4 and Laura was 2, Zachary came home from a trading trip with news. There is a school starting up in Pyramid City, a real one, with a trained teacher. I was thinking, in a few years when Zachariah is old enough, we could make arrangements. Maybe rent a place in town for the school season. Luna looked at him in surprise. You would leave the mountain? Not permanently. But for our children's education, I would compromise. They should have opportunities we did not have. It was a gift, and Luna recognized it as such. Zachary loved his mountain home, but he loved his family more. They did not end up needing to rent in town. Instead, Zachary began building an addition to the cabin, larger rooms to accommodate their growing family and potentially a schoolroom. He also, to Luna's surprise, started meeting with other families who lived in the surrounding mountains about pooling resources for a teacher. If we can gather enough students and contribute to a salary, we could bring the school here, he explained. There are at least 8 families within reasonable riding distance with children. It could work. It took 2 years, but eventually they found a young woman fresh from teacher training in the East who was willing to try. The mountain school was born, meeting 3 days a week in a building the families had constructed together. Zachariah and Laura thrived, and Luna felt a sense of satisfaction knowing that her children would have the education to make their own choices in life. More children followed. A third son, Lucas, born when Laura was 4. Then, 3 years later, twin daughters, Leah and Lily, who turned the household into organized chaos. The cabin expanded again, and Luna sometimes had to laugh at how her life had turned out. The woman who had been digging desperately in the desert with nowhere to go now presided over a home filled with love and noise and endless activity. Through it all, Luna and Zachary's love for each other only deepened. They stole moments alone when they could, still holding hands by the fire after the children were in bed, still looking at each other with the same warmth that had brought them together. They argued sometimes, usually about how to handle the children or whether to invest in expansion or play it safe. But they always worked it out, always came back to the love that was the foundation of everything. When Zachariah was 12 and announced he wanted to go to school in Sacramento to learn about medicine, Luna was terrified. Her son, leaving the safety of the mountain, going to a city where anything could happen. But Zachary held her hand and reminded her gently that this was what they had worked for. The chance for their children to choose their own paths. They made arrangements with Luna's cousin, who had eventually been located and had written warm letters welcoming Zachariah to stay with them during the school term. It was wrenching to send him off, but his excitement and determination made it bearable. The house felt empty without him, even with 4 other children still at home. But he came back for summers and holidays, full of stories about his studies, and Luna could see Sarah in his passion for learning. Laura, true to her stubborn nature, declared she was going to be a rancher and began working with the horses Zachary had acquired over the years. Lucas wanted to be a builder like his father, already showing talent with woodworking. The twins were still young enough that their aspirations changed weekly, but they had inherited their mother's organizational skills and kept the household running with surprising efficiency. Years passed in a blur of seasons and growth. Zachary's hair turned silver, though his body remained strong from constant work. Luna's hands grew weathered, her face lined, but her eyes still sparkled when she looked at her husband. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Zachary took Luna back to the clearing where he had proposed. The children were old enough to be left alone for a day, and Luna and Zachary relished the rare solitude. "Do you ever regret it?" Zachary asked as they sat on a blanket looking out over the mountains. "The life you could have had if you had made it to Salt Lake City?" Luna turned to him in surprise. "Not once, not for a single moment. Zachary, you saved me, not just from that desert, but from a life of loneliness and struggle. You gave me a home, a family, love beyond measure. How could I regret any of that?" "I am the one who was saved," Zachary said softly. "I was just existing before you. You brought me back to life." They held each other as the sun set, two people who had found each other in the midst of desperation and built something beautiful. More years passed. Zachariah became a doctor, returning to open a practice in Pyramid City that served the mountain communities. He married a kind woman named Elena who loved the mountains as much as he did. Laura did indeed become a rancher, partnering with a neighbor family to run cattle on the high meadows. She was courting a quiet young man who worked for the Forestry Service and clearly adored her fierce independence. Lucas took over much of the maintenance of the family property and began taking contracts to build cabins for newcomers to the area. The twins, now 16, were making noises about going to teacher training themselves, wanting to come back and run the mountain school. Luna and Zachary had become elders of their small community, the people others came to for advice or help. Their home was always open, their table welcoming. They had the satisfaction of seeing the difference they had made, not just in their own children's lives, but in the broader community they had helped build. On a warm summer evening in 1908, 30 years after that day in the desert, Luna and Zachary sat on their porch watching fireflies emerge as darkness fell. They were in their 50s now, their children grown or nearly so, their life's work largely complete. "Do you think Sarah would approve?" Luna asked softly, her thoughts as always turning to her sister on quiet evenings. "I think she would be incredibly proud," Zachary replied. "You kept your promise to her, you survived, and you made it mean something." Luna leaned against his shoulder, his arm coming around her automatically. "I never thanked you properly, you know, for stopping that day, for helping me, for choosing to lift me up instead of riding past. You have thanked me every day for 30 years just by being yourself," Zachary said. "Besides, I got the better end of that deal. I found you." They sat in comfortable silence, the sounds of the mountain evening surrounding them. An owl hooted in the distance. The wind sighed through the pines. Inside the cabin, they could hear the twins laughing about something, the sound a pleasant backdrop. "No regrets?" Luna asked, echoing his question from years before. "Not a single one," Zachary confirmed. "This life, this love, this family, it is more than I ever dreamed possible." Luna smiled, her heart full. She thought of that desperate woman digging in the desert, certain that her life was over, that nothing good could possibly remain. If she could speak to that woman now, what would she say? She would say that help sometimes came from unexpected places. That rock bottom was not always the end, that love could bloom even in the harshest circumstances. That choosing to accept a hand reaching down to lift you up was not weakness but courage. She would say that life had a way of surprising you, of taking your desperation and transforming it into something beautiful if you just held on long enough to see it. Most of all, she would say that she was grateful. Grateful for every moment, every struggle, every joy. Grateful for the mountain man who had found her and shown her a better way home. Because this was home. Not just the cabin or the mountain or even the family, though all of those mattered. Home was sitting on this porch with Zachary's arm around her, fireflies dancing in the gathering dark, the whole beautiful tapestry of their shared life spreading out behind and before them. Home was love, and Luna had more of that than she had ever dreamed possible. The years continued to flow like the streams down the mountain, each season bringing its own rhythm. Luna and Zachary watched as their eldest grandchild was born, Zachariah's son named after his grandfather. The baby was placed in the same cradle that Zachary had carved so many years ago, its wood worn smooth by generations of use. Laura's wedding was a grand affair by mountain standards, with families traveling from miles around to celebrate. She married her forester, Marcus, in the meadow where wildflowers grew thick and the mountains framed them on all sides. Luna cried through the entire ceremony, remembering her own simple wedding and marveling at how life had expanded beyond those early days. Lucas proposed to a woman from Pyramid City, a carpenter's daughter named Ruth, who shared his passion for building. They planned to construct a home on a parcel of land adjoining the family property, keeping the family close while establishing their own independence. The twins did indeed go to teacher training, but only Leah returned to run the mountain school. Lily fell in love with library sciences and took a position in Carson City, though she came home every summer and wrote long letters through the winter. Each change, each milestone was bittersweet. Luna found herself understanding for the first time what her own parents must have felt, watching their children grow and leave and make lives of their own. But there was pride too, deep and abiding, in knowing that she and Zachary had raised these confident, capable people who knew they were loved and equipped to face whatever came. In their 60s, Luna and Zachary slowed down considerably. The younger generation took over most of the heavy work, and they became advisors and helpers rather than primary laborers. It was an adjustment, learning to accept help rather than always providing it, but they managed. Zachary taught his grandsons to track and hunt, passing on knowledge he had spent a lifetime accumulating. Luna taught her granddaughters to preserve food, to sow, to identify medicinal plants, but they also made sure each child knew that these were skills, not destinies. They could choose their own paths just as their parents had. One autumn evening when Luna was 68 and Zachary was 70, they received unexpected news. A letter arrived from Sacramento from a lawyer representing a distant cousin of Luna's father. Apparently, there had been a small inheritance that had finally worked its way through the legal system. It was not a fortune, but it was substantial enough to make a difference. "What do you want to do with it?" Zachary asked, studying the letter. Luna thought for a long moment. They did not need it for themselves. Their children were all established. But then an idea formed, one that felt right in a way she could not quite explain. "I want to create something for people like I was," she said slowly. "People who are desperate and alone and need help. A fund, maybe, that could help with immediate needs. Food, shelter, burial costs. The things that seemed impossible when I was standing in that desert." Zachary looked at her with the same love he had shown all those years ago. "That is a beautiful idea." They worked with Zachariah, who had connections in Pyramid City, to establish the Ashford Harlan Relief Fund. It was administered through the church and the doctor's office, providing emergency assistance to those facing desperate circumstances. Luna insisted it be done quietly, without fanfare, just help when it was needed most. The first person helped by the fund was a young widow with 3 children whose husband had died in a mining accident. She was trying to bury him with dignity while keeping her children fed. Luna met with her personally, this woman whose situation echoed her own from decades before. "You are not alone," Luna told her. "Accept this help without shame. Use it to get on your feet, and someday, when you can, help someone else." The woman wept with gratitude, and Luna felt something come full circle. She had been lifted up, and now she could lift others. As Luna moved into her 70s, her health began to decline. Nothing dramatic, just the slow wearing down of a body that had worked hard and lived full. Zachary, despite being older, remained stubbornly robust, his mountain strength serving him well. He fretted over Luna constantly, making her laugh with his fussing even as she appreciated the care. "You cannot make me immortal through worry," she teased him one day. "I can certainly try," he replied stubbornly. Their children rallied around them, taking turns visiting, making sure they had what they needed. The cabin that had once housed just 2 now saw a constant stream of children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. It was never quiet, never lonely, and Luna loved it. On their 40th wedding anniversary, the whole family gathered for a celebration. The cabin could not hold everyone, so they set up in the meadow with long tables and endless food. There was music and dancing and storytelling. Luna sat in a comfortable chair that Lucas had made specially for her, Zachary beside her, and watched their legacy swirl around them. 40 years, she marveled. How did that happen? "One day at a time," Zachary replied, his hand finding hers automatically. "Same way we have always done it." As the sun set and lanterns were lit, Zachariah stood and called for everyone's attention. "I want to propose a toast," he said, raising his glass, "to my parents, who taught us what love looks like in action, who showed us that family is built not just on blood but on commitment and care, who gave us roots and wings, to Luna and Zachary Harlan." The chorus of voices echoing the toast made Luna's eyes fill with tears. This life, this beautiful, messy, abundant life, had grown from such desperate beginnings. She thought of Sarah often, especially at moments like this, wishing her sister could see what had grown from that terrible day in the desert. But perhaps Sarah did see. Perhaps somewhere beyond this life, she was smiling, glad that her death had not been the end of Luna's story, but somehow the beginning of something much larger. As the party wound down and families departed to their own homes, Luna and Zachary sat on their porch as they had so many nights before. The mountains rose dark against the starlit sky, eternal and unchanging even as everything else transformed. "No regrets?" Zachary asked. Their ritual question. "Not one," Luna confirmed. "You?" "Just that I did not find you sooner," he said. "But then, maybe we found each other at exactly the right time." Luna squeezed his hand. "You found me when I needed you most, when I was at my lowest. And you did not just save me, Zachary. You gave me a reason to save myself." They sat together in the darkness, two people who had beaten the odds, who had turned desperation into hope, who had built something lasting and good. Luna's health continued to decline slowly over the next few years. She developed a weakness in her lungs that the mountain winters exacerbated. Zachariah, with his medical training, did everything he could, but some things were beyond fixing. Luna accepted it with more grace than Zachary could manage. "I have had a full life," she told him when he raged against the unfairness, "more than I ever expected or deserved. Do not be angry about what comes natural to all of us." "I am not ready to lose you," Zachary said, his voice breaking in a way it rarely did. "I am not planning to go anywhere soon," Luna assured him. "But when the time comes, you have to promise me something, anything. Do not stop living, keep going. Stay connected to our children and grandchildren. Do not retreat back into that lonely man you were before." "Luna, promise me, Zachary. I need to know you will be all right," he promised, though it hurt him to do it. Luna rallied in the spring, her spirits lifting with the warming weather. She spent the summer surrounded by family, telling stories of the old days, passing on recipes and wisdom. She held each grandchild and great-grandchild, making sure they knew they were loved. As autumn arrived and the aspens turned gold again, Luna grew weaker. She took to her bed more often, her breathing labored. The family gathered, knowing without being told that time was growing short. On a clear October evening, 42 years after Zachary had found her in the desert, Luna slipped away peacefully in her sleep with Zachary holding her hand. The funeral was held in the meadow she had loved, and it seemed like half the territory came to pay respects. Person after person spoke of how Luna had touched their lives, through the relief fund, through the school, through simple kindness. The shy, desperate woman who had thought she had nothing to offer had left a legacy of generosity and love. Zachary stood at her graveside, his children and grandchildren around him, and felt the weight of grief settle on his shoulders. But beneath it, there was gratitude. They had had 42 years together. They had built a family, a community, a life worth living. He had promised Luna he would keep going, and he would, because that was what you did for the people you loved. He lived another 5 years, staying active and engaged as Luna had made him promise. He took joy in his growing family, told stories about Luna to anyone who would listen, made sure the relief fund continued its work. He taught his great-grandchildren to track animals and read the weather and respect the mountains. When Zachary finally passed peacefully in his sleep at 84, his family buried him beside Luna in the meadow. The two graves, side by side, became a landmark for the community. Young couples would walk past them and hear the story of the mountain man and the desperate woman he had lifted up, of the love that had transformed both their lives. The cabin remained in the family, passing through generations. The relief fund continued, helping countless people through desperate times. The mountain school grew and evolved, educating children who might otherwise have gone without. And always the story was told and retold of how love and compassion could change everything. Decades later, a great-great-granddaughter named Sarah Luna Harlan stood in the meadow beside the graves of her ancestors. She was a teacher herself, working in Pyramid City, and she had just received her first paycheck. She placed a wildflower bouquet on each grave, a tradition in the family. "Thank you," she whispered to the mountain wind, "for showing us how to help each other, for building something that lasted." The mountains stood eternal around her, silent witnesses to generations of love and life. Somewhere in those peaks, perhaps, the spirits of Zachary and Luna walked together still, hand in hand, forever home. The legacy they had built continued, touching lives they would never know, spreading ripples of kindness and compassion through time. Because That was what happened when you chose to lift someone up instead of passing them by. When you showed someone a better way home. The desperate woman digging in the desert had become a matriarch whose influence touched hundreds of lives. The lonely mountain man had found connection and purpose beyond anything he had imagined. Together they had proven that redemption was possible, that love could bloom in the unlikeliest places, that choosing compassion changed not just individual lives, but entire communities. Their story was told around fires and dinner tables, in classrooms and churches, a reminder that hope existed even in desperate circumstances, that sometimes help came from unexpected places, that the hand reaching down to lift you up might lead to the greatest love of your life. And high in the Nevada mountains, where the pine trees whispered secrets and the streams ran clear, the Harlan family continued to thrive. Generation after generation, built on the foundation of love that Luna and Zachary had established all those years ago when a mountain man found a woman digging in desperation and chose to show her a better way home.